The battle was over. Of the 3,000 draft ships that had come to destroy humanity, only 340 survived. They floated in space with their weapons powered down, surrounded by human vessels that had every right to destroy them. They waited for death. It did not come. Admiral Cole looked at the defeated fleet on his screens. His ship was damaged. His crew was exhausted. He had lost friends, soldiers, good people who would never see home again. Part of him wanted to give the order. Part of him wanted to finish what the draft had started. But that was not the human way. All enemy vessels will stand down and prepare for boarding, Cole announced. Any ship that resists will be destroyed. Any ship that surrenders will be taken prisoner. We do not kill those who cannot fight back. That is what separates us from them. The draft ships surrendered. One by one, their commanders broadcast their defeat and opened their doors to human boarding parties. The war was over. On New Eden, the fires were still burning. The death toll was still climbing. 4,312 civilians had died in the bombardment. Men, women, children. Families torn apart. Lives ended too soon. The survivors gathered in the ruins of their cities and began to count the dead. Nicole Webb emerged from the shelter with 3,000 children behind her. They were scared, confused, crying for parents they might never see again. But they were alive. Because ordinary people had decided that some things were worth dying for. Jake Morris sat in the rubble of the industrial district, his wounded leg finally being treated by medics. Around him, his construction crew rested. They had lost 8 of their own. 8 friends who would never build anything again. "We held them," Jake said quietly. "We held them until the fleet arrived." The medic nodded. "You did more than hold them. You became soldiers." Jake shook his head. "No, we stayed what we always were. We're builders. We just had to build a wall with our bodies instead of our tools." 3 days later, the Galactic Council held an emergency meeting. Representatives from 200 species gathered to discuss what had happened at Kepler 442. HFY was asked to present his report. He stood before the council with his recording device in his hand. He had spent 3 days reviewing the footage, organizing his thoughts, trying to find the words to explain what he had witnessed. He was not sure words were enough. "I came to Kepler 442 to document the extinction of humanity," HFY began. "I expected to record a slaughter. Instead, I witnessed something that changed everything I thought I knew about this species." He played footage of the battle. Human fighters dancing through asteroid fields. Marines fighting in conditions that would kill most species. Civilians arming themselves with tools and kitchen knives. A schoolteacher guarding children with her body. "Humans are not the strongest species in the galaxy," HFY said. "They are not the most advanced. Their ships are crude. Their weapons are simple. By every measure we use to judge military power, they should have lost." He paused and looked at the assembled representatives. Many of them had feared humans before. Now that fear was written clearly on their faces. But humans possess something that cannot be measured. They have the ability to find hope when there is none. They laugh in the face of death. They protect their children with a ferocity that defies logic. And they love so deeply, so completely, that they become unstoppable when that love is threatened. He played one final piece of footage. It showed High Arbiter Zethanol being led through the ruins of New Eden. Human soldiers walked beside him, not to protect him from the aliens, but to protect him from the humans. Survivors lined the streets. They did not attack. They did not curse. They simply watched in silence as the creature who had killed their families walked past. They could have killed him, HFY said. They had every right. Instead, they showed him the graves. They showed him the names of the children his bombardment had killed. They made him understand exactly what he had done. The council chamber was silent. I asked Admiral Cole why they spared him, HFY continued. His answer stayed with me. He said, because making him live with what he did is worse. And because we have to be better than them. We have to be. HFY turned off his recording device. The Drath believed humans were weak because they showed mercy. They thought kindness was a flaw. They learned the truth too late. Mercy is not weakness. It is the ultimate strength. Only those who can destroy completely have the power to choose not to. He looked at the assembled species, many of whom had considered humans beneath notice. Many of whom had thought about challenging human territory. Many of whom were now reconsidering. My recommendation to this council is simple. Do not threaten human children. Do not attack human homes. Do not test human resolve. Because if you do, you will face the full fury of a species that has nothing left to lose. And you will not survive. He stepped back from the podium. I came to document humanity's end. Instead, I witnessed why they will outlast us all. Weeks later, HFY stood at the window of his ship as it passed through human space. The fleet was returning home, battered. Ships carrying exhausted warriors moved through the darkness toward Earth. On the lead ship, Admiral Cole stood on his damaged bridge. Captain Megan Pierce stood beside him, her wounds still healing. Behind them, the crew of the Starboard Hope worked to keep their broken vessel alive for just a little longer. Sir, Pierce said quietly. What happens now? Cole looked at the stars ahead. Earth was still far away, but they were going home. Now we rest, he said. We mourn our dead. We rebuild what was broken, and we prepare. He turned to look at his captain. Because this won't be the last time someone decides to test humanity. It never is. Pierce nodded slowly. And when they come again? Cole smiled. It was a tired smile worn down by war and loss. But there was steel beneath it. When they come again, we'll be ready. We always are. HFY watched the human fleet disappear into the distance. He thought about everything he had seen. The battles. The sacrifices. The impossible victory against overwhelming odds. And he understood something that he had not understood before. The galaxy feared humanity not because they were monsters. The galaxy feared them because they were good people who had learned how to fight. They were protectors who would not stop. They were builders who could become destroyers. They were ordinary people who became extraordinary when everything they loved was threatened. He picked up his recording device one final time. This is HFY, historian of the Voltheri people. I have completed my documentation of the Battle of Kepler 442. I came expecting to record an extinction. Instead, I witnessed a species proving why they deserve their place among the stars. He looked out at the darkness of space, where somewhere in the distance, human children were playing in rebuilt schools, and human families were mourning lost loved ones, and human soldiers were already training for the next battle that would surely come. The cosmos fears humanity. Now I understand why. And may the stars have mercy on anyone foolish enough to forget it. He ended the recording and watched the last human ship fade into the black. The story was over, but humanity was just beginning. The people of New Eden did not run. When the warning came, when they learned that 1,700 enemy ships were racing toward their world, they had a choice. They could hide in shelters and pray. They could try to evacuate, though there were not enough ships for everyone. They could surrender and hope for mercy. They chose to fight. Nicole Webb was a school teacher. She had spent 15 years teaching children how to read, how to think, how to dream. She had never held a weapon in her life. But when the warning came, she did not hesitate. She gathered her students, 3,000 children from the primary schools, and led them to the underground shelters. Then she organized other teachers to guard the entrances. They armed themselves with whatever they could find. Kitchen knives, metal pipes, old hunting rifles that had not been fired in decades. We are not soldiers, Nicole told them. But those are our children in there. And nothing is going to hurt them. Nothing. Jake Morris was a construction worker. He had spent 20 years building homes and schools and hospitals. He had never thought about war. But when the warning came, he looked at the heavy mining equipment in his warehouse and had an idea. He gathered other workers. Together, they converted drilling machines into weapons. They turned construction vehicles into armored transports. They built barricades from building materials meant for homes. The military is coming, Jake told his crew. But until they get here, we hold the line. All across New Eden, ordinary people became warriors. Farmers who had never seen combat picked up tools and prepared to defend their land. Doctors who had sworn to heal learned how to hurt. Grandparents who had lived peaceful lives found the fire they had buried long ago. Draft Fleet arrived at New Eden like a cloud of death. High Arbiter Zethanol looked at the blue and green world below him and smiled. "Begin bombardment," he ordered. "Burn their cities. Kill their children. Show them the price of defiance." The draft ships opened fire. Kethfer watched from the observation deck as beams of energy fell on New Eden. Cities burned. Buildings collapsed. The sky turned red with fire and smoke. Thousands died in the first minutes, but then something strange happened. The people on the surface started shooting back anti-aircraft weapons that the colony Defense Force had maintained fired into the sky. Missiles launched from hidden positions. The mining equipment that Jake Morris had converted sent heavy projectiles toward low-flying draft ships. A draft dropship carrying 200 soldiers attempted to land near a residential area. A woman with gray hair and steady hands aimed a shoulder-mounted missile launcher at it. She had been a competitive shooter in her youth, 50 years ago. She had not lost her skill. The dropship exploded before it touched the ground. "They're fighting back," Zethanol growled. "Civilians are fighting back. Increase bombardment. Destroy everything." More fire fell from the sky. More people died. But the survivors did not break. They did not beg. They fought harder. Nicole Webb heard explosions above the shelter. Dust fell from the ceiling. Children cried. She gathered them closer and began to sing. It was a simple song, one she had taught them in class. One by one, the children joined her. Their voices filled the shelter, drowning out the sound of destruction above. Outside, a draft squad approached the shelter entrance. They had heat sensors. They knew children were inside. Easy targets. Easy kills. They did not expect to find 30 teachers with weapons waiting for them. The fight was short and brutal. The teachers lost 11 of their own. The draft lost all 20 soldiers. Nicole Webb took a wound to her shoulder, but refused treatment until every entrance was secured. "They're not getting in," she said. "Not while I'm breathing." Jake Morris led his construction crew against a draft landing force near the industrial district. They used their converted equipment like weapons of war. Drilling machines punched through draft armor. Construction vehicles crushed enemy soldiers. Workers who had built this colony with their hands now defended it with those same hands. Jake took a blast to his leg. It burned through his flesh to the bone. He wrapped it with a piece of cloth and kept fighting. "This is our home," he shouted to his crew. "They don't get to take it. Not today. Not ever." The human fleet was still 20 minutes away. 20 minutes felt like forever. Admiral Cole pushed his ships as hard as they could go. He watched the reports from New Eden. He saw the death tolls climbing. He saw the cities burning. And he saw his people, his beautiful, stubborn, impossible people, refusing to die quietly. "Sir," Commander Porter said, "we won't reach them in time to stop the bombardment. Even at maximum speed, we'll arrive too late." Cole stared at the tactical display. He saw the positions of the draft fleet, the curve of the planet, the path of their approach. And he saw something else. Something crazy. Something that might work. What if we didn't go around the planet? Cole asked. What if we went through it? Porter looked at him like he was insane. Sir, you mean atmospheric entry? At combat speed. The ships aren't designed for that. The heat alone would be survivable, Cole interrupted. Barely, but survivable. He looked at his tactical officer. We dive into the atmosphere, use the planet's gravity to swing us behind the draft fleet. They won't expect it. They won't be ready, and we'll be right on top of them before they can react. Porter was silent for a long moment. Then he smiled. It's insane, sir. It's human, Cole replied. All ships, prepare for atmospheric dive. This is going to hurt, but it's going to hurt them more. The human fleet changed course. They aimed directly at New Eden, not to land, but to use the planet itself as a weapon. On the surface, the people of New Eden looked up and saw burning trails in the sky. At first, they thought it was more draft weapons. Then they recognized the shapes of human ships, falling through the atmosphere like meteors, trailing fire and fury. The human fleet emerged behind the draft formation. They came out of the dive burned, damaged, some of them barely holding together. But they came out fighting. The draft were suddenly trapped. The armed civilians below them. The human fleet behind them. Nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. Admiral Cole opened a channel to the enemy fleet. High Arbiter Zethanol, you came here to kill children. You came here to burn homes. You came here thinking humans were easy prey. His voice turned to ice. You were wrong. The human fleet opened fire. The civilians on the surface opened fire. The draft fleet, caught between two forces of pure human rage, began to die. Captain Megan Pierce led a boarding party onto Zethanol's flagship. She fought through corridors filled with enemy soldiers. She took wounds that would have killed most species. She kept going. She found the High Arbiter on the command deck, surrounded by guards. The fight lasted 3 minutes. When it was over, Pierce stood over Zethanol's broken body. He was still alive. Barely. Kill me, he whispered. Finish it. Pierce looked at him with cold eyes. No, she said. You don't get to die yet. You have something to see first. She signaled her team. We have him. The flagship is ours. Below, on the burning surface of New Eden, the surviving colonists watched the draft fleet crumble. They watched enemy ships explode one by one. They watched their defenders, their champions, tear the invaders apart. And for the first time in hours, they allowed themselves to hope. The humans led the draft fleet into a place called the Graveyard. Kethver knew this region of space. Every historian did. 10,000 years ago, a great war had been fought here. Entire civilizations had died. Their ships still floated in the darkness, broken and silent. A memorial to species that no longer existed. The Drath had destroyed them all. Now the Drath chased the human fleet into this same region, eager to add another species to the collection of the dead. They did not see the trap. They did not understand that humans had spent months preparing this place for their arrival. Admiral Cole watched his screens as the enemy fleet entered the graveyard. The ancient wreckage surrounded them on all sides. Broken ships the size of cities floated in the darkness like the bones of giants. All ships, hold position, Cole ordered. Commander Porter, status report. Porter checked his console. All weapons platforms are online. Mines are armed. Defense systems ready. He looked at the Admiral with fire in his eyes. Sir, they're completely surrounded. Cole nodded slowly. Then let's welcome them properly. The graveyard came alive. From behind ancient wrecks, human weapons platforms opened fire. From within the debris, thousands of mines activated and flew toward Drath ships. Automated defense systems that had been hidden for months began to shoot. The Drath fleet was trapped. HFY watched from the observation deck as chaos erupted. Drath ships exploded in every direction. They tried to flee, but there was nowhere to go. The wreckage blocked their escape routes. The mines followed them wherever they moved. The weapons platforms never stopped firing. They planned this, HFY said, his voice shaking. They knew the Drath would chase them. They knew they would come here. Humans have been preparing this trap for months. The other observers said nothing. They were too shocked to speak. On the Starboard Hope, Captain Megan Pierce prepared her Marines for another assault. The Drath command ships were still intact, protected by layers of smaller vessels. Pierce intended to change that. "We're boarding the flagship," she told her soldiers. "High Arbiter Zethanol is on that ship. We're going to find him." Her Marines cheered. They had already fought through impossible conditions. They had already done things that other species called impossible. And they were ready to do more. Dr. Lisa Webb moved through the medical bay, treating wounded soldiers as fast as she could. The ship shook with every impact. Lights flickered. Alarms screamed. She ignored all of it. A young Marine lay on her table, his chest torn open by Drath weapons. He was dying. Everyone could see it. "Doc," he whispered. "Am I going to make it?" Webb looked at his wounds. She knew the truth. She told him anyway. "You're going to be fine," she said. "But I need you to stay still while I work." She operated on him for 30 minutes while the battle raged outside. The ship lost power twice. An explosion threw her against the wall. She got up and kept working. When she was finished, the young Marine was still alive. "Get him to recovery," she ordered. "And bring me the next one." Outside, the battle reached its peak. Human ships moved through the Drath fleet like hunters through a forest. They attacked damaged vessels, finished off crippled ships, rescued pilots who had ejected into space. Corporal Ethan Price had survived his first battle. Now he fought in his second, then his third. He boarded a Drath destroyer with his squad and cleared it room by room. He was shot twice. He kept fighting. He was cut by Drath blades. He kept fighting. He watched friends die beside him. He kept fighting. When the destroyer was taken, Price sat down against a wall and finally allowed himself to breathe. His hands were shaking. His armor was covered in blood, some his own, most not. His sergeant found him there. "Corporal, you did good today." Price looked up with tired eyes. "Sir, how many more of them are there?" The sergeant checked his tactical display. "About 2,000. But we're winning." Price nodded slowly. He stood up, checked his weapon, and prepared to fight again. "Then let's finish it." The Drath lost over 1,200 ships in the graveyard. Their perfect formation became a scattered mess of burning wreckage and dying screams. High Arbiter Zethanol watched his fleet crumble and felt something he had never felt before. Fear. He pressed his communication button with trembling hands. "All ships, this is the High Arbiter. I am calling for reinforcements. All Drath fleets in nearby systems, respond immediately. We need support." The answer came back quickly. It was not what he wanted to hear. "High Arbiter, the nearest fleet is 17 days away. We cannot reach you in time." Zethanol stared at the message. 17 days. He did not have 17 hours. He did not have 17 minutes. The humans were tearing his fleet apart, and there was nothing he could do to stop them. But then an idea came to him. A dark, terrible idea. He could not defeat the human warriors. That was clear now. But warriors were not the only humans in this system. There was something else. Something the humans valued more than their own lives. Their families. "All ships," Zethanol ordered. "Ignore the human fleet. Set course for the colony world. Maximum speed. His commanders hesitated. "Sir, that will leave us exposed to attack. We'll lose more ships." "I don't care about ships," Zethamel growled. "I care about victory. If we can't kill their warriors, we'll kill their children. We'll burn their homes. We'll make them watch their families die. Set course for the colony. Now." The remaining Drath ships turned away from the battle. 1,700 vessels, still a massive force, began to race toward New Eden, the largest human colony in the system. 12 million people lived there. Families, children, innocents who had nothing to do with this war. Admiral Cole saw the Drath change course. He understood immediately what they were planning. "All ships, pursue course," he ordered. "They're going after the colony." But the Drath had a head start, and they were faster in open space. Cole watched the enemy fleet pull away. He did the math in his head. The humans would arrive at New Eden, but not in time to stop the bombardment. Not in time to save everyone. He opened a channel to the colony. "New Eden, this is Admiral Cole. The enemy is coming your way. We're pursuing, but we might not reach you in time." He paused, his voice heavy with emotion. "Hold on, we're coming. I swear to you, we're coming." On New Eden, 12 million people heard the message. They looked up at the sky and knew that death was falling toward them, and they began to prepare. The first wave of Drath ships numbered 500. They moved in perfect formation, a wall of black metal and weapons designed to crush the small human fleet in minutes. HFY watched from the observation deck and prepared to document humanity's destruction. Then the humans did something no one expected. They charged. The 47 human ships did not fall back. They did not spread out to avoid the incoming fire. They accelerated directly into the heart of the Drath formation. It was suicide. It had to be suicide. What are they doing? The Marathi ambassador screamed. "They're flying into their own death." HFY said nothing. He could not speak. He could only watch. The human fighters launched first. Small, fast ships piloted by single humans shot out from the larger vessels like angry insects. They flew into the asteroid field that surrounded the battle zone, weaving between massive rocks at speeds that should have been impossible. HFY knew about human physiology. He knew they could survive forces that would kill most species. Their bodies were dense with muscle. Their bones were thick and strong. Their hearts pumped blood with incredible power. But what he saw now went beyond biology. These pilots were flying through spaces barely wider than their ships. They were making turns that should have crushed their organs. And they were doing it while laughing into their communication channels. "All right, boys and girls," a female voice said through the broadcast. It was Lieutenant Katie Ross, leader of the human fighter squadron. "Let's go hunting." Her squadron followed her into the asteroid field. The Drath fighters tried to chase them. It was a mistake. Human ships danced between the rocks like they were playing game. Drath ships crashed into asteroids, exploded against each other, broke apart in the chaos. Lieutenant Ross flew her fighter through a gap so narrow that it scraped the paint off both wings. She came out the other side behind a Drath carrier and fired everything she had into its engines. The carrier exploded. 300 Drath died in an instant. "One down," Ross said calmly. "Who wants the next one?" On the Starward Hope, Admiral Danny Cole watched the battle on his screens. His tactical officer, Commander Sam Porter, stood beside him with a grim smile on his face. "They're taking the bait," Porter said. "The Drath are chasing our fighters into the asteroid field. Their formation is breaking apart." "Good," Cole said. "Signal Captain Pierce. Tell her it's time." Deep in the human fleet, a ship called the Iron Will changed course. On its deck, Captain Megan Pierce stood before 200 Marines in full battle armor. These were humanity's finest soldiers. Men and women who had trained their entire lives for moments like this. "Listen up," Pierce said. Her voice was hard as steel. "We're going aboard that command ship and show these aliens what happens when they threaten human space. I don't want prisoners. I don't want mercy. I want them to remember this day for the next 1,000 years. Am I clear?" "Yes, Captain." The Marines shouted as one. The Iron Will accelerated toward the largest draft vessel in the formation. Enemy fire hit its shields again and again. The ship shook and groaned. Pieces of metal broke away. But it did not stop. It could not stop. Humans did not know how to stop. HFY watched in disbelief as the human ship crashed directly into the side of the draft vessel. It punched through the outer hull like a knife through flesh. Alarms screamed across both ships' and then the humans poured out. They fought in conditions that would have killed HFY in seconds. The draft ship was filled with toxic air that burned human lungs. The temperature was far below freezing. Gravity shifted randomly as systems failed. None of it mattered. The Marines moved through the ship like water through cracks. They used weapons, fists, knives, anything they could find. A young corporal named Ethan Price found himself alone in a corridor facing 12 draft soldiers. He was 20 years old. It was his first battle. He killed all 12. When his rifle ran out of ammunition, he used it as a club. When the club broke, he used his hands. When reinforcements found him 11 minutes later, he was still standing, covered in alien blood, guarding the corridor so his squad could advance. "Corporal," his sergeant said, "you can rest now." Price shook his head. "Not until it's done, sir." Back in space, the battle had turned into chaos. The draft formation was broken. Human ships moved through the enemy fleet like wolves through sheep. They attacked from angles that made no sense. They used tactics that no military manual had ever described. Chief Engineer Ryan Grant kept the stalwart hope alive through sheer will. Every time a system failed, he fixed it. Every time the ship should have died, he found a way to keep it breathing. He worked with burned hands and broken ribs, refusing to stop, refusing to let his ship fall. The draft lost 87 ships in the first hour. The humans lost 3. On the observation deck, HFY stood frozen. His recording device had fallen from his hands. He could not process what he was seeing. "This is impossible," the Kellex delegate whispered. "How are they doing this?" HFY finally found his voice. "I have studied humans for 30 years, he said slowly. "I thought I understood them. I was wrong." He picked up his recorder. "They train for war in simulations more brutal than actual combat. They fight battles in their minds, thousands of times before they fight them in reality. Every human soldier out there has already won this battle. They are simply making it real." High Arbiter Zethanol watched from his flagship as his fleet crumbled. His forearms gripped his command chair until the metal bent. This was not possible. Humans were weak. Humans were primitive. Humans were supposed to die easily. A draft captain broke formation and tried to flee. Zethanol pressed a button on his chair. The captain's ship exploded. "No one runs," Zethanol growled. "Regroup the fleet. All ships, coordinated assault on the human flagship. Kill their leader, and the rest will fall." The surviving draft ships began to reorganize. They turned toward the Starboard Hope with murder in their weapons. Admiral Cole watched them come. He smiled. "They think we're defending," he said to Commander Porter. "They think this is as good as we get." He pressed a button on his console. "All ships, fall back to coordinates 774. Let them chase us." The human fleet began to retreat. But HFY noticed something strange. They were not running away. They were leading the draft somewhere specific. Somewhere the aliens would not expect. "They're not retreating," HFY said. his voice barely above a whisper. "They're hunting." The Drath followed, eager to finish the job. They did not know they were walking into a trap that had been set months ago. They did not know that the humans had been waiting for this moment. They did not know that the real battle was just about to begin, and by the time they understood, it would be far too late. Ketfer stood at the observation window of the Velthury ship and watched 3,000 warships fill the darkness of space. The Drath Collective had come to destroy humanity, and Ketfer had come to write the story of how it happened. He was a historian. His people, the Velthury, did not fight wars. They recorded them. For 600 years, Ketfer had traveled the galaxy and documented the rise and fall of species. He had seen empires burn. He had watched entire civilizations disappear in fire and silence. Now he would watch the humans die. It was not personal. It was simply the way of things. The Drath were ancient. They had conquered 1,000 worlds before humans learned to make fire. Their ships were massive and black, covered in weapons that could crack planets open like eggs. Their soldiers numbered in the billions. They had never lost a war. The humans had 47 ships. Ketfer checked the number again. 47. He looked at the small human fleet floating in the distance, so tiny against the ocean of Drath warships. It was almost sad. The humans had been in space for only 200 years. They were children playing with toys, and they did not understand that the adults had come to take everything away. The other observers stood with Ketfer at the window. Representatives from 12 neutral species had come to watch the battle. They spoke in quiet voices about what would happen next. The Moradi ambassador predicted the humans would surrender within the hour. The Kelligs delegates said they would fight but die quickly. Everyone agreed on one thing. By tomorrow, humanity would be a memory. Ketfer turned on his recording device and began to speak. "The date is the 4th day of the gathering cycle. I am aboard the Whisper of Stars at the edge of the Kepler system. The Drath Collective has assembled the largest fleet in recent memory. Their target is the human colony worlds. I am here to document what many believe will be the extinction of the human species." A signal came through the ship's communication system. The Drath High Arbiter Zethanol was broadcasting to the human fleet. Ketfer listened as the translation came through. "Humans," the Drath commander said. His voice was cold and sharp like breaking ice. "You have one chance to live. Surrender your worlds. Surrender your ships. Surrender your people to our service. Do this now, and some of you may survive as slaves. Refuse, and we will burn everything you have ever built." Ketfer waited for the human response. He expected silence, or perhaps begging, or maybe a desperate offer to negotiate. Instead, a human voice came through the channel. It belonged to Admiral Danny Cole, commander of the human fleet. "Thank you for the offer," Cole said. His voice was calm, almost friendly. "But we have a problem. You see, nobody ever taught us how to surrender. We checked all the manuals. We asked around. Nothing. So I'm afraid we can't help you there." There was a pause. "But here's what we can do. We can teach you something instead. We can teach you why you should have left us alone." The channel went silent. Ketfer blinked his 4 eyes. He looked at the other observers. They seemed as confused as he was. The human was joking. His species was about to die, and he was making jokes. "They have lost their minds," the Moradi ambassador said. "Fear has broken them." But Ketfer was not so sure. He had studied humans for the past 30 years, preparing for this moment. He had read their history, watched their entertainment, analyzed their behavior. Humans were strange creatures. They laughed when they were afraid. They made jokes when death was close. It was not madness. It was something else. Something Ketfer did not fully understand. He turned his observation sensors toward the human flagship, a vessel called the Starward Hope. What he saw made him pause. The humans were not panicking. They were not crying or praying or saying goodbye to loved ones. They were moving through their ship with purpose and energy. Some of them were singing. Others were laughing together. A group of soldiers sat in a circle, sharing food and telling stories. One human woman, a pilot based on her uniform, was dancing in the corridor while music played from a small device. Her crewmates cheered her on. "What are they doing?" The Calix delegate asked. "Do they not understand what is coming?" Cathver zoomed in on the faces of the human crew. He looked at their eyes. And there, finally, he saw something that made his blood run cold. They were not afraid. They knew exactly what was coming. And they were not afraid. In their eyes. Cathver saw something he had seen before, long ago, in a predator species that had terrorized his homeworld. It was the look of a hunter who had spotted prey. It was anticipation. It was hunger. The humans were not waiting to die. They were waiting to fight. Admiral Cole appeared on the main screen of the Starward Hope. He was an older man with gray hair and a calm face. He looked at his crew with the expression of a father looking at his children. "Listen up," he said. "In about 20 minutes, 3,000 ships are going to try to kill us. They think we're weak. They think we're scared. They think this is going to be easy." He smiled. It was not a kind smile. "Let's show them how wrong they are. Let's show them what happens when you threaten our home. Let's show them why the galaxy should have left humanity alone." The human crew cheered. It was a sound like thunder. Cathver stepped back from the window. His hands were shaking. He had documented 100 wars. He had never been afraid before. But now, watching these strange creatures prepare for battle against impossible odds, he felt something cold crawl up his spine. The Drath Armada began to move. 3,000 ships advanced toward the human fleet like a wave of darkness. The 47 human ships held their position. They did not run. They did not hide. They waited. Cathver pressed the record button again. "The battle is about to begin," he said. "The humans are outnumbered 60 to 1. By all logic, by all military theory, by everything I know about war, they should be dead within the hour." He paused and watched the human ships begin to power up their weapons. But I am starting to wonder if logic applies to these creatures at all. The first Drath weapons fired. The darkness of space lit up with energy and death, and the humans flew straight into it.